JD here, and as you can see, we are on F1 23 as always. And as you can see by today's video title, we are going to be discussing why I think personally lower downforce is the way to go when it comes to open lobbies, competitive racing, league racing, and just having the best race results as possible. And you can see the wins there were 28.20, and typically for Suzuka time trial it's normally 37.31, 37.30, that kind of range. So we've gone about 10 clicks down, and doing this deliberately just to show you of how much more of a benefit it can be in the race. And apologies for the video quality, wasn't able to actually record this because my PC unfortunately has been crashing again. I definitely need to be getting a replacement of that, so I've had to rely on the PS5 software, 720p for fun. Been doing this, but you will see by this qualifying lap, my Sector 1, 31.5 is absolutely nowhere, and you'll be able to see at the end of this one-shot qualifying, we were very, very far off the pace, and this lap I didn't really feel was too bad. I feel like I could get maybe 2 or 3 tenths, something more out of the lap, but you will see from running the low downforce of how beneficial it can be in a race situation. And don't get me wrong, for the purposes of this video, we've gone a little bit extreme with the downforce. This is something, these wings here to 28.20 are probably something I wouldn't be running in an official league race, but I'll be running somewhere in between. So I'll probably be running something like maybe 35.28 rather than the 37.30 or no 33. 34 probably, something like that. You can see we go massively deep into the last chicane, so not a particularly tidy lap here. So I reckon that cost me probably a good 2 or 3 tenths there, 27.5, almost 0.6. Not an incredible lap. And you will see at the end of this, that puts me 9 tenths off Mark Sosa. And I think the best I could probably do is maybe a 27.2 with that setup. So that still would have put me 6 tenths off the pace. So now we're going to be showing pretty much an almost uncut 25% race here. And as these 5 lights go out, let's see what we can do. And please put down in the comments what your experiences are with the wings. How much do you change them from the time trial when it comes to an online race situation? You can see making a good start here. Go around the outside of Slick up into P3. And we've got Schumacher_1, who is an ex-F1 esports driver, or ex-F1 Challengers driver, if I'm being correct. And you could just see through this first sector already of how much time we have actually lost with these wings. But the thing with the low downforce is that the more the race goes on, the more it will swing into your favour. And that's really because the tyre wear doesn't change an awful lot between the different downforce levels. But the main reason is that your ERS, you can save so much more of the battery when you are running a lower downforce, because there's a lot less drag on the car. The engine doesn't have to do as much work to keep the speed, to keep the car flowing through the air. It's a lot more streamlined, a lot more efficient, and that means not only will you be faster in a straight line, as you can just see going into this final chicane, look how much we've pulled away from the guy behind and closed up on these guys, but you are also able to recoup your battery or regenerate your battery at a much, much faster rate. And tracks like Suzuka, I thought this would be a good track to kind of demonstrate of how much of a difference these low wings can do, because you can see in the qualifying we were absolutely nowhere, which is why I wouldn't suggest going as low as I've done here. But you could just see now in this first sector, this is where we're going to be losing all of this time. But if you can keep the momentum going, you can keep consistent with your driving, you can see we've lost well over half a second in here. But the longer this race goes on, you can see we're barely losing any of the battery, whereas these guys, I know Mark Sosa was running about 10 wings higher than me. He was losing so much ERS, and he wasn't even able to actually save any ERS per lap. So I'm able to actually save some, have a much faster straight line speed, and if I'm getting attacked from behind, the battery, the overtake button is so powerful that I literally just can't even be overtaken anyway. So the biggest thing is getting through the qualifying, trying to start in a good grip position, But if you watched any of my recent league races, if you're running a lower downforce setup, then sometimes qualifying isn't even that essential. As long as you can start there or thereabouts, which for me is in the top 5, top 6, you can start there, but you could just see in a straight line here, look how much time we've gained, and we're still on 75% of the ERS. Mark Sosa was about under 40% at this stage of the race, and yeah, the longer this race goes on, as I said, the better it will become. You can see even without the aid of the DRS, it's like we have the DRS enabled. So we're going to stay on board here as we skip towards the end of lap 3. You can see using a little bit of the battery. It looks like Mark Sosa was trying to break out of that DRS zone. You can see Schumacher's gone quite deep into his final chicane. The guy behind me was using quite a bit of the battery just to see how close he could get to me, but again, he is just wasting his battery, whereas my ERS levels are going to be much, much higher than everyone else's. And as the longer this race goes on, the lower the fuel level gets, the less kind of understeery this car becomes, the more suited it will be for me. But in qualifying trim and in time trial, you can actually get away with a high downforce setup because the grip doesn't change, the fuel load doesn't change, you have access to the DRS and you have unlimited ERS. But once all those things start running out, you don't have the DRS in the race, you're having to save a lot more of the battery, the tyres are coming together a bit more, the fuel load's going down. This is where I really do feel if you can get away with running a lower downforce, lower wings in your competition, then although you might be losing some time during certain corners or certain sectors of the track, if you can have the ability to save an extra 10 to 20% more ERS, be much faster in a straight line, not only is it going to make it very difficult for you to be overtaken, but you are just going to be in that position to actually make those overtakes. And we all know how powerful this overtake button and really save the ERS in this game, because you can see again without even using it, an absolute rocket ship in this straight line. And you know, we were 9 tenths away from pole, probably more like 6 tenths if we had a fairly decent lap, but we were 6 tenths off on 1 lap pace, and you can just see we are really comfortably being able to stay with the leader. So that gap that you lose in qualifying, so you might be suffering over the 1 lap, but the advantage comes back to you in the race, and end of the day, that's where you're going to get results. But obviously there's leagues such as like PSGL and F1 Esports. Lower downforce probably wouldn't be insanely beneficial in leagues such as this because the competition is just so good. The drivers who are using the higher wings, they're probably going to be maximising the corners almost every single time. It's probably going to be quite difficult to use a much lower downforce and still be competitive. But I think any league that is not on an F1 Esports level, I think you will definitely be benefiting from this. And again, I think the ability to save the ERS is just so crucial on this game. So you can see, I think Mark Sosa and Schumacher, some people have pitted, so Schumacher has pitted, myself and Mark Sosa are going to be continuing for another lap, so we're not going to be using too much of the battery this lap. So going to this turn 1 leading, let's see what we can do. And that also goes for tyre freshness, so people who've undercutted you, yes, they're going to be getting a big undercut, but the freshness of the tyres at the end, you should be able to make up that time. And if you have the ERS to use to make those overtakes and you're much faster in a straight line, then this is where I think you will be definitely benefiting quite a bit. So as we pit here now, we're going to stay on board for the rest of this race. You can see coming into the pits with about 70% of the battery. You can see it's gone up quite a bit to 75%. So let's see how much of an undercut this actually was. I think Mark Sosa has actually continued. You can see these guys are coming out into this turn 1. And yes, we have been undercutted, but they did pit a lap, or a couple of these guys 2 laps before me, which is actually going to make a pretty big impact. So it's clear the gap is about 1.5 seconds. And the goal now is to get back within that DRS zone by the end of the lap without, again, using too much of the battery. But since we have 1 lap fresher tyres or 2 lap fresher tyres, that disadvantage with the low downforce is actually negated even more. So I should actually be having a little bit more grip than these guys, which will be making up for that lack of downforce. And then I should be able to actually be faster with fresher tyres and much quicker in the straight line. This is why I typically like to go for a little bit of an overcut when running a lower downforce as well, because then it's going to make your grip probably even more similar to the guys who are running those higher wings, because their tyres are going to be a little bit more worn on you. So coming off this corner, Spoon, we're going to be using a bit of the ERS now, always looking at that top left delta, and you can see we've actually turned off that ERS, and we're not even going to be using it because you can see how fast we're down the straight line. We are going to get within that detection point, so no point burning all of that ERS here now. Coming through this final chicane, getting in the DRS, and let's see how much we actually close in on Slick, who doesn't have anyone in front of him. So the gap is 1.3 seconds, and as we come through here, as Mark Sosa is coming out of the pits, you can see we gained about 3 to 4 tenths just going down that straight along. So all we have to do now is just be nice and patient. Mark Sosa, you can see that undercut, he's actually lost 2.4 seconds, and this is a mistake I have actually made recently as well. It's why you need to be very, very confident in your pace, because otherwise if you lose too much in the undercut, you might not be able to make up that time again. But you can see going for this first sector, we're not even losing that much time now, because we are on these fresher tyres. You can see Mark Sosa hasn't really closed in too much. The ERS has gone almost up to 70% again, so not using any of the battery here. We're just going to take our time with this, and let's see how much time we actually gain going into this final chicane. So going to Spoon, really enjoy this track on this game. Coming off the exit, we're not going to be using any of the battery, and the gap is 7 tenths of a second. You can just see how much that is falling, and yeah, not even using the battery, and you can see we could have almost actually probably have done this overtake if we didn't have Welsh Jack in front of us. So we're going to let these two kind of sort themselves out, see how much time Mark Sosa has actually lost. So coming off the exit here, we're going to use the ERS here. So I was actually planning to overtake both of these two guys, but then as we come down for this home straight, going to the right hand side, and what on earth has happened there? I don't know what happened there. I think there was a little bit of lag involved. Maybe the speed kind of caught me off guard of how quick I was actually closing in, but that wasn't really ideal because I really wanted to try and get ahead of both of these guys so that the next quickest guy, Mark Sosa, would be stuck behind him for a lap or two, and then I felt quite confident that I'd probably be able to break out of their DRS. So that wasn't really in the plans. Really wanted to try and dispatch both of these guys, because now Mark Sosa, who has the freshest tyres out of all of us, is probably going to be closing in and getting within that DRS zone by the end of the lap. But again, you can see the battery is still up to almost 70%, so we have so much battery. And at this stage of the race, everyone else was under 30% of the battery. So that just shows how much of an advantage it is if you can run lower downforce than your competitors and really keep with them, keep within that DRS zone, because in this game it is hard to overtake. Using the overtake button, no matter what your wings are, you're probably going to be able to defend your position. So if you can hold on to more egress, then it doesn't really matter if the guy's faster behind you. They need to be considerably faster in order to get the overtake done. So coming off the exit this corner, don't know if we're going to go for it. So he's made a little bit of a mistake. So this time I think we are going to go for it, having to burn a little bit of this ERS. Not going to the right hand side this time, using the slipstream of Welsh Jack up ahead. And you can just see, even with both of us having DRS, how much faster we were in that straight line. Schumacher, I'm not quite sure what happened to him. I think he had a bit of an incident or a bit of a mistake somewhere. I think his wheel disconnected, he told me after the race. But you can see for his first sector, because of the freshness of the tyres, I have a lap fresher tyres than Welsh Jack. He hasn't really actually pulled away that much from me, so we're able to keep with him pretty nicely. Come through into here under the bridge. This is a really tricky corner in this game, so we want to avoid these curves. But as we come into the hairpin, Mark Sosa is right behind me now, and got to be careful. Don't want to lose position to him. Want to make sure we are probably leading going into this last lap. So you can see again, even if we use the ERS in the last lap, we've actually haven't really lost that much overall. So going into Spoon, we are really, really close to the Aston Martin. Coming off the exit here now. We're going to use a little bit of the ERS. The answer is no. I think the Aston Martin is using a bit, but we are so fast in straight lines. And Mark Sosa, I think, was using a bit of the battery, but we didn't have to. We've actually closed in even quicker than we wanted. So thinking back out there the inside, but really just trying to stop Mark Sosa going around the outside. So try and get a really good run coming onto the start-finish line of lap 12, using a bit of the battery, and we're not going to be using all of it, so we're going to be turning it off as we get alongside him, because we know there isn't really much he can do in a straight line. And now we have a car between myself and Mark Sosa, and we are still almost close to 60% of the battery. So everyone else was about 20-ish% at this stage, and I felt quite confident, even leading going to last lap, as it looks like Mark Sosa has now gone to second place. I knew it's probably going to be very, very difficult for him to get past, and yeah, let's see what we can do. So for his first sector, he's going to be all over me, but we're not going to be using the battery here, because even if he overtakes me before the start of the last lap, I'm just going to re-overtake him going down into his tail one. So going into his hairpin, getting some good rotation, really smooth on the power, using a little bit of the ERS just to get yourself just a little boost. And as we now come through into Spoon, I'm not really concerned about using the battery here, because I know, like I said, if he overtakes me before this last lap, that I'm just going to simply just re-overtake him again. So using a little bit actually here just to get that momentum going and forcing him to maybe use a little bit more than he likes, just to try and stay as close as he can, because he actually needs to be close if he wants any opportunity to go down and overtake with his tail one, making a little bit of a re-locking, going to trying to get a good exit. But you will see again, with this overtake button and the straight line speed, he has the DRS, which is very powerful. We're using the battery, but he's not even able to get alongside and into turn one. We have still got 30% of this battery, and I can confirm he was actually running almost under 10% battery at this point. So I knew all I had to do is just stay ahead of him through this first sector, because there isn't really many opportunities apart from the hairpin and going into the final chicane. But he gets a really good run using that battery again, but decides to back out of it because there's absolutely no way he is going to go around the outside of me there. Getting a good exit coming off this right-hander, and he's going to be really, really close. And is he going to make the overtake into here? He was thinking about it, so that's a little bit of room on the inside. But again, I knew if he got that move done, we're probably going to get him on the exit of Spoop. So now I'm coming across a couple of cars that I've disconnected, which are going to be a little bit annoying to get through as we go through into Spoon sections. We have to go drive through into the middle of one of these. Makes it really difficult to see the apex, but get a pretty good exit. But now you're going to see, using his battery, he's run out of battery at this point, and you'll see what we're just putting away in a straight line. There's absolutely nothing he can do, and you can see the gap has almost gone up to half a second at the contact braking zone, despite him having a slipstream being 0.6 plus quicker in qualifying. You could see the benefit of the low downforce here. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you learned something. I really hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you head over to www.coachlimitless if you'd like a direct one-to-one session with me, and I will be catching you very, very soon. Peace.